It's a pleasure being here again after yesterday when we covered the Maltese elections. There is again a very, very important election coming up. I'm really psyched to talk about this. The upcoming parliamentary elections in Armenia, upcoming Sunday, June the 7th. I will not be alone, of course, covering this important election. It's a pleasure. Tigran Grigoryan, you're the director of the Regional Center for Democracy and Security and a political analyst in Yerevan, Armenia. Thank you so much for joining us here. It's a pleasure.
Thank you, Emil. Thank you for the invitation.
Thanks so much. Yeah, we'll take around half an hour going over the most important topics in the Armenian elections coming up, the parties, the main topics for the voters, what the current atmosphere in Armenia is, and what can happen after the election results on Sunday. We also had another speaker, Elen Manaseryan from the Trade Union Confederation of Armenia. We hope she can still join us, but at the moment she was running a bit late, so hopefully she can still join us for this meeting here. So maybe Tigran, before going into the first question, I always forget to say, through the audience also thank you for joining, of course, and you can also put your questions in the Q&A here on YouTube, and I will put them live, of course, directly to Tigran. So if you have any questions, pressing, burning questions on the Armenian elections, please put them forward and we'll cover them here. So maybe Tigran, to start just very broadly, like what's the current atmosphere in Armenia? Do you see a lot of the elections on the streets? How is the current atmosphere in the country?
Yeah, absolutely. The election topic dominates the public discourse in Armenia, and it's been dominating the discourse not just in the past month, but also the months actually preceding the official pre-election campaign. What we all should know about these elections is the fact that these are the first geopoliticized elections in Armenia's independent history. And by that, I mean that all the major domestic actors, political actors, have their own geopolitical preferences and foreign policy preferences, but also all the external actors present in the South Caucasus have their preferences in this electoral race. So when it comes to the domestic actors, the ruling party has been conducting this policy of diversification since autumn 2022. And the main idea behind that policy is to mitigate this unilateral dependence on Russia in the sphere of economy, energy, but also foreign policy and security. There have been some successes in certain areas, but overall the process is still ongoing. The main opposition parties that have a real chance into getting into the parliament, and namely the Strong Armenia Party led by Russian Armenian businessman Samvel Karapetyan, and also the Armenia Alliance led by the second president Robert Kocharyan, and some other smaller parties, they are in favor of closer relations with Russia. They think that the current government has spoiled the relationship with Russia, and that's the reason for all the security failures Armenia has experienced in the past years. Of course, there are many more parties participating in this electoral race. There are overall 19 parties or alliances participating in the race. Let's not generalize, this. Let's not put this dichotomy on all of them, but when we talk about the actors, the main actors who stand a chance of getting into parliament, this is the overall picture. When it comes to external actors, the situation is very similar. So Russia has been nearly openly supporting these opposition actors that are pro-Russian in their foreign policy choices. Russia has been using its traditional toolkit of information influence and interference into domestic affairs. There has been a lot of investigations going on and being published about this process. So they want to have as much presence in the next parliament as possible. I don't think they believe that it's possible to win this election or to defeat Prime Minister Pashinyan, but I think they're trying to influence the elections in a way that there are as many pro-Russian actors in the parliament as possible. When it comes to the European Union and the United States, the picture is also quite clear here. The EU has been basically tacitly supporting the ruling party to get re-elected. You know that two major summits have been organized recently in Armenia, the European Political Community Summit and the first ever EU-Armenia Summit just 1 month before the election. And this is a clear political signal to the Armenian society that the European Union has its own preferred candidate and the party. And the reason for that position is, first of all, what's going on in Georgia. Having basically lost Georgia, Brussels now views Armenia as its only remaining partner in the South Caucasus. The second factor is, of course, the Russian factor. Having this situation when the main opposition parties basically want closer relations with Russia, and Pashinyan is trying to distance Armenia from Russia, although we could discuss the level of success in that process. They have made a very pragmatic choice. This choice might come at the cost of the EU's long-term credibility, because of this choice, the EU has been also turning a blind eye on certain violations of rule of law and also anti-democratic moves by the current government. So in the short term, of course, I think the ruling party will get re-elected and the EU will have the outcome it wants. But the thing is that the ruling party would have gotten elected even without this support. But in the long term, in the long run, I think this will be a problem for the EU credibility in Armenia. When it comes to the United States, it's all about the TRIP project. As you know, last August, in August 2025, Armenia and Azerbaijan agreed on an arrangement to open a communication through southern Armenia that is supposed to be become the start of the unblocking process in the entire region and contribute to the opening of Armenia-Turkey border as well. Well, at least that's what Armenia wants from this process. And the current US administration ties the future of this project to the Prime Minister's personality and to the ruling party's success. And Washington has also been quite clear about its preferences. Vice President Vance was in the region several months ago. He openly endorsed the Prime Minister. Most recently, State Secretary Rubio had a very brief visit to Armenia. I think it lasted 40 minutes, and both sides signed several documents, which are important documents, but they weren't as urgent as it was presented. These documents could have been signed after the elections. So the fact that Rubio basically stopped in Armenia within his broader trip, I think it was coming from India, just to sign these documents and send an additional signal to the Armenian society that, we have our preferred partner in this country, is also very evident. So this geopoliticized nature of the elections, I think, creates a lot of problems. First of all, issues related to the democratic process, human rights, freedom of speech, and freedom of media have been sidelined. There is a lot of attention on these Russian attempts to interfere in the elections, which is legitimate. I think it's a genuine threat coming from Russia. But I think the emphasis on that sole issue has kind of contributed to sidelining some of the other important issues related to the elections. So overall, this is the picture. If you have any more questions, any further questions, I'm ready to answer.
Yeah, thanks, Tigran. It's very broad and a good introduction also into the international players in the field. And there are many more follow-up questions I would like to ask on top of that. But maybe to kind of zoom into the topics that are also very prevalent to Armenian voters. Of course, there are many opinion polls also being done, for example, by IRI, and there I think we also see that international affairs are very important at the moment also for voters in Armenia. Can you tell a bit more about in what way international affairs are important? What kind of aspects are currently very prevalent? Is this the broader geopolitical field around Russia, US, EU, or also are there also many topics related, for example, to the peace deal with Azerbaijan? Can you tell a bit more about that?
Yeah, so when it comes to the voters' preferences, it's a very interesting situation. Despite this very polarizing situation and polarized situation when it comes to foreign policy choices, The majority of respondents in this IRI poll or other credible polls, although there are not too many credible polls conducted in Armenia, these fake surveys are part of the pre-election, campaign and struggle. So these parties are using these polls to basically affect the voters. So the IRI poll is the most trusted one. And if we look deeper at this poll, we would see that the Armenian voters are in favor of a more balanced foreign policy. So we don't have this situation like in, Georgia, Ukraine, or even maybe Moldova, when there is a clear preference for a single geopolitical actor, when the Euro integration process is the main priority of the society. Although the same poll says that if there was a referendum to join the EU, I think more than 70% of the population, I think it was 75, would have voted for that. But it's more of a theoretical choice, because at this point there is not a process of actual EU membership for Armenia, although there's a lot of talk about that. So the foreign policy preferences of the Armenian society are quite balanced, I would say. When it comes to security, I would argue that the biggest takeaway from the Washington summit in August 2025 is the fact that for a lot of people, security is not the biggest concern anymore. Prior to the Washington summit, all the polls conducted by IRI show that more than 40% of the population considered security as their biggest concern. Now this number is down to 20, even less than 20%, according to the latest poll. Of course, the topic is of peace with Azerbaijan and normalization of relations with Turkey is a central topic of these elections. So the government has been trying to present this post-Washington momentum, positive momentum, as the peace it promised in 2021. During the snap parliamentary elections of 2021, the government once again ran with this agenda of peace. They basically promised to bring an era of peace to the region. Of course, it's difficult to argue that we have that era of peace, because there are still a lot of outstanding issues, like Armenian sovereign territories being occupied, Armenian prisoners of war being held in Baku, the peace treaty being just initial and not signed. But in the meantime, there have been some positive, changes in the relationship. The hostile rhetoric has become less aggressive and hostile, and the government is trying to sell this as this promised peace. All the major opposition parties, once again, emphasizing that I'm talking about the big ones, not smaller parties who have differing opinions. In principle, they do not reject these arrangements with Azerbaijan. They do not say that if we come to power, we will basically reject the peace treaty, or we will, we will not sign, we will not continue with the implementation of the TREE project. But they argue that, this arrangement should be improved, should be renegotiated. There should be guarantors in this process when it comes to the peace treaty. When it comes to TREE, they also want to involve other actors, which is not very realistic. But overall, of course, this topic of peace has been instrumentalized by political forces as well. In the very beginning of the campaign, the Prime Minister infamously said that if we don't get elected, there will be a war with Azerbaijan. He went even further, saying that if we don't get a constitutional majority, there will be a war in September. So being very specific. The reason why he talks about the need for the constitutional majority is the potential constitutional referendum that is supposed to happen after the election. So as you probably know, Azerbaijan has this precondition that Armenia needs to change its constitution for it to sign the peace treaty. The government publicly denies that, it has something to do with the Azerbaijani demand. It says it's a purely the domestic process, but they are basically on board with this agenda. But it will be very hard to deliver on this agenda under the current requirements, legal requirements, because the thresholds are too high. At least 600,000 people should vote for the constitution for it to be adopted. So their plan is to get a supermajority, constitutional majority, to amend some of these requirements, to basically lower the thresholds, and then have a more realistic chance of delivering on the constitution issue.
So the steps are that first they will amend the constitutional referendum, so it's easier to organize the referendum or to make it kind of to make it legitimate, and then it's more easy also to pass the needed reforms in the constitution to do the peace deal.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Okay.
It's because the current regulations about the constitutional referendum are too rigid,
Yeah,
and it's very hard to deliver under those conditions.
clear. Thanks, Tigran. In the meanwhile, our other colleague, Elen Manaseryan from the Confederation of Trade Unions, Armenia, has joined as well. Hopefully, Elen, you can see and hear us. We cannot
Yes,
see.
yes.
Ah, super. Hi, Elen. We
Hi,
cannot see.
sorry that I was late. I
No
was in a
problem at
meeting.
all.
Sorry.
No problem at all. We are really super happy that you were able to join us because, of course, it's a very busy week for all of you in the lead up to the elections. We can't see you, but I'm not entirely sure whether that's
You
possible.
can't see me because if I turn on my video, you will not be able to listen to me.
Okay, no problem. We rather
I have some
listen than
technical problems.
no problem
Sorry.
at all. We rather listen to you than have the video because the sound is the most important. So maybe to go quickly to you, Elen, we started with Tigran on a couple of questions on the current parties, the opposition parties, the international affairs being very important and prevalent in the Armenian elections coming up this Sunday. But of course, we are also very keen on hearing on the economic situation in Armenia and also how important social affairs are in this election. Is this something that's up for debate and something the political party programs have distinguishable differences in, or is this something that's totally absent of the political debate towards Sunday? What's your take on that?
Of course, the situation is very, very complicated now in Armenia because we all understand that everything is too serious. From one side, we feel the influence from the opposition parties and also the countries for which are in favor with the opposition parties. From the other side, we see what is going on in the government. Of course, when we are talking about the economic situation, which is very, very difficult now, especially after the situation when Russian Federation just doesn't allow some for some business for export, some especially agriculture, agriculture food or something like that, or even when we are talking about Armenian cognac and so this is very, very it makes very difficult the situation because it influences not only for on the business but influences only also for the workers because the workers are the first people who feel this influence of economic, let's say, economic war, yeah. Because what happens, there are many organizations where, for example, the employer says that I have some difficulties and I can't pay you, and also he just terminates labor contracts with some people, with the workers. From one side, it is maybe it can be justified, but for the other side, it is just a chance for the employer to terminate some labor contracts or not to pay the remuneration for these people. So it makes very difficult the situation for the government, for the political party which is now in the government, because all the people who are workers, just simple workers, they feel this influence, and it also will influence on their decisions when they make on Sunday. From the other side, of course, we read and we listen the speeches of today's Prime Minister, who says that they will find out a way to help these people to open European market for such farmers, for example, or businessmen. But still, when they don't see the real result of these solutions, they will still have this bad influence on them, and the workers will have in their mind this influence. From the other side, when we are talking about social protection, for example, yes, this government made some reports on regarding the social rights and social protection, especially when we are talking about health insurance. But still, we don't, and there are many people who even feel the good side of this insurance, or maybe the pensions, which were just increased for 10,000 Armenian drams. But these are not about social protection. This is not a policy. These are just activities which the government is doing. It is not a institutional thing, because when, of course, the insurance, it is very important, and the trade unions were talking about health insurance for many, many years. But when we didn't have the results, and the legislation, even when it was still draft of this legislation, when we're discussing it in the tripartite committee, it was awful. We made a lot of steps, we made a lot of discussions in order to have the legislation like we have today, although it has many, many gaps inside, and we have to work and improve it. But I'm not sure if we will have chance to improve it after the 7th of June. Either with this government or the other, it doesn't matter, because the governments or the political parties usually are active in social protection rights during or before the elections. After the elections, they all forget about such things. So, but social protection is one of the most important thing in Armenia, because when we are talking about people in the population with approximately 23% of poverty, people who are living under the poverty. So, and there are many people who have the employment. So they have employment, but they are still poor. So it means that we don't have any policy on social protections. And if of course, I understand if there were a person from the government, they would say that they have many, many employment projects from the Social United Service, and they are open, all people can come and have their social projects. But still, these employment projects are not enough, and they are not for all. We are talking about just people who are living in the villages, who are living even in Yerevan or in some towns, and who don't have the employment, or have the employment but no decent job. It is not enough to have just employment. The employment should be decent, and the salary should be decent. So these are the main, I think, the main gaps that our government and even the other political parties who have their projects, programs for the elections, I don't see this line of social protection. These are just promises.
Yeah.
No political policy, no strategy on this. When, for example, a person from opposition party says that we will give 150,000 Armenian drams for the poor families, it doesn't mean that this is a policy. This is not a policy. This is like you are giving money for people who are begging you.
Yeah, and it's not a structural solution for anything. You try to say, I think. Are you still there, by the way, Ellen? Because
Yes, of
oh, okay,
course.
super. Oh, sorry, I thought you might have disconnected. Maybe one short follow-up question before going back to Tigran here is, so summarizing what you're saying, and thank you so much for these comments, is that you don't see any structural kind of debate at the moment on social policies from politicians, from political parties in the campaign. Is your assessment there that geopolitics, international affairs is that the central focal point of these elections, and these issues are kind of absent, if I understand correctly?
In some kind, yes, because when, as I said, yeah, when they are talking about some support to the people in their speeches, It is not institutional. So it's absent. And it is absent in all political parties, not on the government or the opposition. All of them, they even don't. Sometimes I have feeling they even don't understand how much it is important, the social protection and social policy. Because every time when you are talking about, I don't know, solidarity, when you are talking about the defending of the country, or when you are talking about that Armenia is your motherland, and so on, so on, so on, some pathologic things. When people are not secured and in social protection, they don't feel all this. But no political party is focusing on social protection, and no political party is focusing on even on social partnership.
Yeah, thank you, Ellen, for these comments. We'll get back to you in a bit, but maybe to go back to you, Tigran, we also got some questions from the Q&A, and I also wanted to follow up to some stuff you said before. Maybe one question we got from the Q&A is, to start with, that is an important one as well, is are you worried about any influences of foreign disinformation campaigns, particularly from Russia in these elections? And this is something also I wanted to ask, because has been a worry, of course, across the board in many other elections also last year. What's your take on that?
Yeah, absolutely. It's there. Cybersecurity experts and fact-checking journalists have been documenting this interference patterns for the past year, I would say. The interference infrastructure is quite similar to the one observed in Moldova. So it's mainly the same toolkit, but what the Russians, I think, are trying to do, they're trying to localize also, to adjust it to the local context, to the local grievances. But in Armenian case, of course, the other major difference is that it's not just about Russia. You also have Azerbaijan. At some cases, you also have Turkey, basically multiplying these narratives. The big question is, what is the level of this interference, and what is the actual impact of this interference on the election outcomes? The most prominent cybersecurity and disinformation experts in the country say that, yes, there is a significant interference going on. But of course, the levels are not comparable even to the levels of the 2021 snap parliamentary election. This is what, for example, Artur Papian, the most prominent expert in this area, has been saying. But the other ways of interfering is, of course, economic pressure. As it has just been mentioned, Russia has been using these economic tools to basically also influence the outcome of the election, but I'm not sure that it's having the intended effect. If we're, for example, comparing the two latest IRI polls, one was conducted in February and the latest one in early May, we see that Russia's standing has actually decreased a lot in this very short period, and it has coincided with Russia's adoption of more aggressive approach towards Armenia, both on the level of rhetoric and also when it comes to economic tools being used against Armenia. And we have also seen some sort of growth for the ruling party when it comes to support, and a decrease in support for the major pro-Russian party. But if we're talking about external influences, of course, I think it's very wrong to compare what Russia does with the behavior of other actors. But things like organizing, summits a month before elections, first ever EU Armenia summit, it also has an effect on the voters' preferences and perceptions, and this grows in the ruling party's support number also show that.
Yeah, thanks, Tigran, for these comments. And maybe to stick with you for one follow-up question before going back to you, Ellen, and good to see that we also have some video connection here. So great that you succeeded in that. So maybe Tigran, about this rhetoric, Like you were very clear about like the current players. The party civil contract of Pashinyan is in. They are expected to gain a big majority, possibly even a constitutional majority vis-à-vis the major opposition parties, of which most of them are pro-Russian. They're much smaller. Would you say that the rhetoric during these elections on geopolitical affairs has been much worse than in recent elections in Armenia? And are you worried about this rhetoric and the consequences of it for the future political kind of setup and relations, also societal relations in Armenia?
Yeah, absolutely. Firstly, I'm not sure that the ruling party will get a constitutional majority. That's what they aim for, but I'm not sure they will be able to do that. I think they are favorites to win this election and have a simple majority, but I wouldn't go as far as saying they will get a constitutional majority. But this is a very important question. The polarizing rhetoric from both sides, but especially from the ruling party, has been very intense in this pre-election period. The prime minister has been using very boring language, basically attacking different segments of the society. We have this instant when a refugee from Nagorno-Karabakh, a political activist, Artur Osipyan, approached the prime minister during a campaign meeting, asking him a question. Firstly, he attacked him verbally, asking a question, "Why didn't you die?" I can go into a lot of detail on this topic, but I won't go there. The hate speech against refugees. But then the law enforcement got involved. This man was arrested under absolutely trumped up charges. There is an absolute consensus in the Armenian civil society, even within those groups that are more loyal to the current government, that this is an absolutely unlawful and anti-democratic measure. This man has been under a hunger strike for 15 days now, and there is no any legal explanation what he did wrong. There is no criminality in what he did, but it's just one instance. Both the ruling party, especially the ruling party, but also some of the opposition actors have been using a language which basically does not align with the democratic process. Both of these sides have been basically delegitimizing their political opponents, presenting a picture as if we're not dealing just with political opponents, but threats to Armenia's security, sovereignty. When it comes to the opposition, they accuse the prime minister of being a Turkish Western puppet. The prime minister accuses all of his critics of being, fifth column and Russian agents, and that leaves a very limited space for actual policy-based discussions and debates and for democratic, discourse. So this issue is a very serious issue, and it's not that it has emerged only in the pre-election period. This has been happening for many years now, and especially in the past years, we have seen a lot of violations of rule of law, instrumentalization of law enforcement and the judiciary for narrow political purposes. And the big question for the future of Armenian democracy is what happens after the election. Because if the prime minister gets reelected, has a renewed mandate, and there is absolutely no reaction to these very worrying trends and actions by the incumbent, by the international community, but also by the domestic actors, then these trends will exacerbate, and we will surely have a much more serious democratic backsliding that we have been witnessing in the past year.
Thanks, Tigran, for these comments. And that's indeed, something very worrying to keep an eye on, and also the role, if I understand you correctly, of international observers is therefore not to be underestimated, especially also from the European side. Elen, to go to you. Do you agree with these takes from Tigran? And also, if so, what could be also a role that international actors, also from, for example, European Union, can play in also fostering more policy-based discussions, for example, on strengthening social affairs, the economy of Armenia? What do you think should happen there?
Thanks. Regarding the rhetoric of the political parties, of course, it is worse than ever. I think we never had such rhetoric because there is too much words of hate, words of just telling everything bad that we see, yeah, because we don't see healthy discussions. There is no healthy discussion, just blaming each other, nothing more. Because even on the television, when we just watch the discussions, sometimes even you don't want to watch these discussions because it's not good for your health and for your ears. You prefer not to listen to it because when you understand that these people are going to rule you, to rule the country, it is very bad. And we should understand that after 7th of June, there will be 8th of June, and we should see each other and just welcome each other. It is not good to be in such situation, in such how to say, to be diplomatic, yeah, just in a situation where even we sometimes don't want to say hi to each other. It is very bad. So it is because of this rhetoric from all the sides. Not only one, for example, political party is using it. All of them are using it. All of them are blaming each other. I don't see any political party which is talking about future programs, about their future, how they see the future, what is their vision, what are they going to do. These are just blaming each other, telling some, I don't know, information which, and people sometimes don't know this information is false or true. It is very important also what information is going is providing people. This is also very bad, and it has also bad influence on decision which people are going to make. Some people are telling that there will be war. Some people are telling that there are some 300,000 Azerbaijanis will come. The others are talking about Russia. The other are talking about European Union. So the social media is in a very bad situation, and as the social media is the main line where people get information, so sometimes it is very important to filter this information, which is impossible. Which is impossible now. When you go to there are even families where, for example, children are not talking to their parents, or parents are not talking to their children because they have some different opinions about this or that political party. This is because of this rhetoric. This is because what we have in the political field, what we have in the pre-election field in Armenia. So this is very bad because even, for example, when one of the political parties says that if we don't win, there will be a revolution. So this is not good. So we will do everything. We will do everything to have a new revolution, and so on. So this makes people to be in very serious situation, and we should just understand that I'm repeating myself, but 8th of June will also come. So we should understand that we should continue to live in the Republic of Armenia, and we should think about Armenia, not about each of them. This is about the rhetoric, and the other question was.
Yeah, more also on what the international community and also, for
Yeah.
example, European actors can do also to accommodate also and foster more healthy policy discussions. But
I
it's of
think
course,
that
yeah.
European Union now will not be able to change this rhetoric and this situation regarding the discussions, because we already have it. And there are only a few days left. This will not be even logical to think that the European Union should do something for this. European Union did it before with their experience, with their example, which was not taken from our country, for example, from our political parties. And I'm talking for all political parties, not only about one or two. For all, I'm talking about all, even the political parties who are not talking, but they are just they are having such situation. So and I don't think that the European community can do now any change on this. The only thing that the European community will do, this is the observers who will be in Armenia and who will just follow how the elections are going on. And I hope very much that there won't be very, I don't know, such situation that we will have. I don't want to tell it aloud in order not to make it come true. But anyway, the situation is very serious and we should think about it.
Yeah, so regarding potential manipulation of the elections, I think you refer to, and yeah, and then if I understand from your points, Ellen, and also from you, Tigran, the situation is quite tense and very tense around these elections, and also more tense than it has been before. Yeah, we have around 5 minutes left. Time is going very quickly, so yeah, I'll have one final question for the both of you. It's also looking ahead to, indeed, as you also say, Ellen, there's also a day after June the 7th, and it's June the 8th, and there will be also Armenia, Republic of Armenia afterwards to work on together. And this polarization is indeed very hurtful also for people not coming together in that sense. And of course, also, yeah, the last couple of years and the decades for me also, and still are, the security situation is, yeah, remains a very important topic and very tense for a lot of people. Maybe to start with you, Tigran, is what do you expect after these elections to be the major kind of issues for a new government that they will want to tackle and that they will have to tackle? So, of course, you already referred to this constitutional referendum. Are there other topics that, yeah, that we really should have an eye on, also looking for from the international community as well?
Yeah, so the overall peace process with Azerbaijan will be a central topic to follow. Not just the future of the peace treaty, but also the future of the implementation of the TREE project. There has been some progress, and bilaterally with the United States and Armenia, the things are going quite well. But at some point, Azerbaijan will have to join the discussions, and this is a potential source of, possible problems. The relationship with Russia will be another central issue. We've briefly discussed some of the measures Russia has been implementing, but it's not just about the elections, it's about also the wider policy of diversification. So up until recently, the Armenian government has been conducting this diversification policy, but it hasn't been affecting Russia's strategic assets on the ground or structural presence on the ground. So there are several key issues, key topics, the future of which will define this relationship. The first one is the future of Armenia's railway system. The Armenian government has been trying to transfer these management and concession rights from Russia to a third party. And for the Russians, it seems to be a red line. And some of these economic sanctions, economic bans are actually conditioned by that process as well. Armenia is trying to diversify its energy, and particularly it is trying to build a new nuclear power plant with a non-Russian partner. The United States seem to be at a far front position at this point. So this is another potential source of tension. The overall economic situation, of course, will be important. If Russia keeps using this economic leverage, how the Armenian government manages to mitigate, these consequences, economic and social consequences on the population. I think the state of democracy is a very important issue we should focus on. As I've said, we've been following and monitoring a lot of negative trends in the past year, and I think my expectation and prediction is these trends will continue and they will probably deepen. That's why there should be a way more consolidated effort by the independent actors in the Armenian civil society, by their partners, to basically hold the government accountable to slow or stop this democratic backsliding. So there are a lot of processes going on, a lot of problems, and I agree that the most important thing is what happens after the elections, not the elections themselves, because I don't really see any question marks regarding the outcome of the election. And to be honest, I don't even expect any post-election processes, given the opinion polls we have and the level of support for these other parties.
Yeah, clear. Thanks, Tigran. Elen, what do you think? What are the major things to look to after the elections?
Telling the truth, I'm not jealous with the government and the parliament, because they have they should have very clear clear task on their table. Most of them, Tigran already told you regarding the railway, regarding the new power plant, but also we should mainly the new government, as I am a unionist. They should also think about social rights and social protection, because when people don't have social protection, they are not satisfied with the government. From my point of view, as a trade unionist, it is very important for every government, not only for Armenia. But of course, Armenia has many, many issues on just relationship with neighbors, with Azerbaijan, with Turkey, with Georgia. Yesterday was just started the work, new railway, which connected Georgia, Russia, Turkey, and Azerbaijan. So what is going on with Armenia? What is thinking Armenia on this? How they will try to have any profits, or maybe to be involved in this or not. So these are many, many tasks, very important tasks, which should be on the table of the new government and the new parliament. So they should just, I don't want to repeat Tigran, but these are what I think to add, yeah, from my point of view. So, but anyway, it is very important for the government, for the new government, to understand that they should work with the civil society organizations and to have this social dialogue, which will help them very much to be maybe more democratic, and to really to regard the European values, which are sometimes disappearing in the Armenian society and in the Armenian reality, which we already see during these elections, for example. Yeah, some of them, Tigran already talked about them. When we have such cases like people are not telling the things that you or you don't like what they told you, and they are in prison sometimes, and so on and so on. So the new government, whatever it will be, they should think about having more democratic values, and also regarding the defense of Armenia, because when there are no military actions, it doesn't mean that you have peace. It is not the enough situation that you have peace. You should, because peace is is a value that you should just work on it every day. Absence of military actions, it is not enough. So this is also a huge task for the new government, and also how they will just work with Russia. Uh, we want this or not, Russia is one of our indirect neighbors. And we should also think about this, and we should not forget that there is a huge diaspora in Russia. This is also a question. Yes, we have such a economic situation with Russia, but yes, we are not agree, for example, with what is going on in Ukraine, but still, it's a country which is not just very far away from Armenia. It is not in, for example, in South Africa. Yeah, it is just here in the region. So we should, the government should think how they develop their relationship with the countries in the regions, which are in the region, which are very, very important figures in the region. I think these are the tasks that I'm not sure even, that the political parties who are now in the marathon of elections sometimes think so deep about such things from
Yeah,
their speeches, just from their speeches. What we see in their speeches, yeah, when they are talking about this.
yeah.
I don't see that they are seriously thinking about such tasks.
Yeah, and luckily, you and Tigran are there to also keep them and to keep a critical eye on these parties and on the people that are, yeah, that are running Armenia to really focus also on those big tasks at hand. So I think that's very important. And as I understand, also from you, Ellen, it's also an open invitation from the trade unions, from civil society, also to work together on all these issues and not have a very not to be in conflict in many ways, but really to work together on creating stronger Armenia of the future. And also understanding from your points is also there is a role also to play for the international community, specific European international community, European Union, also to strictly and critically look towards the democratic developments in Armenia, and also really look further than like major headlines, but really see what's happening and also be critical if things aren't going well. So I think that's a very important point we take along from this webinar, and we should definitely take and keep in touch about that. Unfortunately, we are out of time. There are so many other things I would have loved to discuss, but we'll definitely do so in the future. For this moment, I really want to thank you, Tigran, Ellen, for being here. It has been a pleasure. Best of luck in the upcoming days with all the busy work. And also, yeah, have a good election day on Sunday, and we'll definitely be in touch also afterwards about the results. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Emil.
Thank you, Emil.
Thank you. To the viewers also, thanks so much for joining, for your questions, for being here. With the European Forum, we'll be organizing much more of these webinars as always. Stay also tuned for our analysis on Kosovo, where there will also be elections this Sunday. It will be on our website, europeanforum.net. And hopefully see you soon in another webinar in the future.